So this is the photo that I'll be editing today. It's just a quick picture of a streetcar in Toronto that I took while crossing the street. The first thing I want to do is crop it so I find the composition that I like. I'm rotating it slightly so that the streetcar is straight, and then making it a little bit smaller so that the streetcar is perfectly centered. Okay, now I can do the basic adjustments. I'll start by adding haze, which is just moving the dehaze slider to the left. This is something I like to do in photos where it's snowing because sometimes it can really emphasize the snow. But all of these first adjustments that I'm going to do are just going to take away contrast, and I'll explain why a bit later. So I added some haze. I'm going to bring the highlights all the way down and bring the shadows up a little bit. You can already see how flat we've made the image, which just means I've taken away a lot of the contrast. Now again, because it was snowing, I want to show that it was cold outside, so I'm going to move the temperature slider a bit more into the blue. It's not a huge difference, but you can see what it does here. And now I'm just going to add a bit of contrast back to the shot. So I'm going to increase the clarity, the texture, and the contrast slider. Now I can move on to the color section, and my goal with the color is to make the streetcar stand out and to add a bit more color contrast to the shot. So I'm adding some blue to the shadows and bringing down the luminance all the way, which will just make them darker. I'm bringing down the luminance on the red, which will also make it darker, and honestly I just kind of prefer that red for the streetcar. So for the colors I don't really want in the shot, I'll just pull the saturation all the way down. I'm doing that for the green and the aqua, and I'll just do a quick update and see the before and the after to see where we're at. At this point, we've basically just made it look colder. Now we can move into selective editing, which is using filters. I'm putting a radial filter on the streetcar. I'm gonna increase the clarity, dehaze it a little, texture, contrast, and brighten it up with exposure a bit. Here's what it looked like before and after. Now, instead of just doubling all the numbers, another thing you can do is right click on that filter and duplicate it, and that will basically apply it on top of itself already and doubling the effect. Now I'm actually going to duplicate it again, but invert it so that now it's affecting everything except the streetcar. And for that area, I'm going to increase the whites, bring down the exposure, increase the contrast, and here's the before and after on that. Now the ground here was covered in snow, but the snow had melted and turned to slush, so it looks quite dirty. All I'm gonna do is raise the whites and bring down the clarity, and that'll give it kind of like a dreamy snow look. Now I'm adding another graduated filter to the top left corner, and you can see here I'm dragging it out so that it's quite feathered, and then I'm bringing it back to where I want it to affect and bringing down the exposure. I'm going to duplicate that and then move the second one to cover the top half of the photo. Now I'll duplicate it one more time and drag it across so it's affecting the right side of the photo. And I'll do a quick before and after on how those filters affected the shot. You can see by darkening everything around the streetcar, I brought a lot of focus onto the streetcar, which is the subject. Now this is probably the most important part of the process, at least it is for me. At this point, I thought that I was done with the photo. I thought I had finished the edit, but I left it for a couple hours, and when I came back, I realized it did not have the depth or contrast that I really wanted out of the shot. So these are the changes I made. I added another graduated filter to the top right hand corner and stretched it out and made that whole area brighter. I found that this created more depth in the shot. Then for the contrast, I made a much steeper S-curve, and then finally raise the whites again overall for the whole photo. So here is the final before and after. I personally find that this looks much better. It gets the contrast I want, but it still has the separation between the streetcar and everything else. And again, I never would have done that if I didn't leave it for a couple hours and come back to it again. I can't stress that enough. I really hope at least any part of this was helpful. If it was, let me know. And I hope as I continue to make these, I'll just get better and better and hopefully help out more and more. Thanks for watching.